Hello, this time we're going to work with Zend Layout and talk a little bit more about Zend View. One of the most common problems that web developers face is HTML repetitive code. Not everything is dynamic content. There's a lot of static content in forms of headers or menus and footers. And Zend Layout helps us to do that. It gives us the ability to create a template file with placeholders. And these placeholders are going to be replaced with whatever dynamic content we may want. The template file may look something like this. The static content that you want to be broadcasted across the whole application, and then you have placeholders something like this that is going to be replaced with the processed data from your application. But the way the manual describes of actually using that template I don't personally like, because according to this I have to call that layout manually in every method controller. Now I don't know if that's my bad interpretation of the manual or not, but I think there is a much better way to do this, and once again this is taken from Rob Allen's blog, and it involves creating a layout resource. In my opinion, something like layouts and templates should be implemented automatically by the application. It's not something that I should set manually. So if you remember, the things that we want to run automatically before the controller and the viewer are executed is the bootstrap file. And the function where the code needs to be has to begin with underscore init. So I will go ahead and create a function called init, and I'll call it view helpers. Again, it doesn't matter what I call this section as long as I have underscore init. Now, the layout resource does not come by default with Zend Framework. So this is a resource that we have to create manually. So let's take this opportunity to learn how to create manual resources. We're going to be storing all the layout files or the template files inside of a layouts folder. We're going to put this folder inside of the application file folder. So create layouts directory, and now I will have to tell MVC where the layout resource is going to be located. That is going to be done inside of our configuration file, the application.ini. We're going to create a new resource by saying resource.layout, and we're going to tell it where it's located by saying layout path equals the application root directory layouts. Resources. So once again, we want all of the layout template files to be inside of the layouts directory instead of application. So we're telling the MVC inside of the application configuration file that the layout resource is going to be located inside of the layouts directory underneath the application path. Now that we have the resource ready, we want to set it up and activate it. We will go back to the bootstrap file, and we're going to initialize the new resource that we created with the help of the bootstrap. So the resource that we created is called layout. Next, now that we have the layout resource activated, we want to get its object so that we can work with it. We're going to store the Zend layout object inside of the layout variable. And now that we have the Zend layout object ready, we can get its view. Now, here is why I'm getting the view. The layout is actually something like Zend view. In fact, it works just about the same, and you can conduct operations with the layout the same way you conduct operations with Zend view. Now the reason why I made the instance of the layout view here is so that I have the ability to control the rendering properties in a bit more detail later on. For now, I'm going to create a file called layout.html where I will put the actual static content that I want to be distributed across the whole application. I have the HTML code pre-typed already. So this is our file that has a lot of static HTML that we want to be in all views automatically. Basically, it's the div tags that will make the page look like this. The actual dynamic content is going to be inside of the div ID called content, and we're going to get the content in there by means of layout content. So Zend layout is going to render the dynamic content from the controller and the viewer inside of the layout's instance content variable. Let's see how that works. If we go back to our project and we refresh that, we have a menu and a content space, and if we look at the source code, we see our static HTML that was applied here. Is visible right here. This is our dynamic content, the actual form that is taking place where we put the content placeholder. Now, I said before that we want the page to look like this, yet it looks horrible like that. This is because the style sheet that controls the layout of the page is not created yet. Now, before we actually implement it, we have to remember that the link tag in HTML is seen as a separate browser request. So the calling of this file is separate from the call of the entire page, which means that this CSS file must be in a location accessible by the browser, and this one and only location is the public folder. This is where the CSS file has to be so that the web browser is able to pick it up independently. So we'll create a folder to house the CSS files, call it CSS, and we're going to create a file called style.css, and I have the CSS file pre-made here. So normally I would just adjust the template and it should work. Okay, so it works for the authentication controller login action. Now let's see if it sticks to the rest of the application. Okay, we have a problem. The style sheet is not being applied. Why? Because